Hello, everyone. This is Reza Dorrani. Welcome to the R&D show.
And hey everyone, on good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Daniel Christian, and thanks for joining our show.
Dan, how are you doing? How has your week been?
It was a long week, I'll tell you that. But I'm happy for Fridays. Always super stoked for the Fridays we do our show here. So I'm an example. But Reza, how's things in your neck of the wood? I mean, I see you're back to your comfortable spot. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm back. Many people had commented I was looking tired. Yeah, I was. I was traveling a lot, so I'm back into my. I'm back home. I'm back in my own space, in my happy space. I got my multiple screens here to play with, so I'm excited, and I'm actually most excited about the show today because Power Apps tips and tricks is something that resonates with me a lot. That's how I started learning about Power Apps is trying to understand the different nuances that are extremely important to know. So yeah, all excited about today's show, and we see the audience is coming in. Hello, everyone. Let's get started with the show. We don't want to waste any time since we have a lot of content to cover.
We do.
So let's go. Ready?
Yeah. Oh, I was born ready. This is fun. Let's go.
All right, let's go. I'm going to first try and project my screen. Let's go to full screen mode and let's begin. All right. So I am in the Power Apps Maker portal, and in this app, I have a data source that is connected to my app. The data source is a simple SharePoint list. Once I have this list connected, I created a home screen that has a data table. You can grab it right here from the top menu. And this data table is linked to that SharePoint list. And I have the ability here to pick the columns that I would like to showcase in this data table. Now, if I was to preview this app and make a selection to any of the items in my SharePoint list here, it takes me to this form screen. And this is the first set of tips that I would be providing is all around the form control in Power Apps, which is an extremely important control when you're trying to perform operations against your data source. Now, in this scenario, I have my form control that is showcasing data for that selected list item. If I click on edit, I change the mode of the form wherein the form is now editable so the user can make certain changes. If I go back and click plus, this takes me once again to the form screen, but this time the mode of the form changes. Now, the first tip around the form control is probably the easiest tip, and that tip is reuse the form control. I have seen numerous examples of folks creating multiple screens for a new form, for an edit form, for a view form. Do not do that. Here I have a single form control right here. And when I navigate to that screen which has that form control, you can also set the mode of the form. So check this out. When I click on this plus icon, right here, I use a function called new form and I give the name of the form. So that changes the mode of the form to new. When I click on the title link right here, when the user selects it, I am setting the mode of the form to view. That's why that same form changes into a view mode. So if I select this item, I have it in view mode. And I have this edit icon right here. If I select this, similar function, here it's called edit form. So changing the mode of the form on the fly, depending upon my use case. Now for the form control itself, I'm going to go ahead and copy the name of my form control, and I'm going to delete this. So how do I work with the form control? To add a form control, you go to Insert, go to Forms, and here you have two options, Edit and Display. Now, Edit form is the more flexible form. You can set it in Edit mode, you can set it in New mode or View mode. Display form is only for viewing purposes. My recommendation is to stick to the edit form because you can anyways change the mode of the form and take advantage of the full flexibility of the form control. So I'll select the edit form here. I will give my form a name. And for the form control, you need to pick your data source. Here's another tip. You can only have one data source associated with a form control. Don't try and add multiple data sources. There's no option available. So my list is called Work Progress Tracker. I will select my Sharepoint list. So right now, the form control is associating itself with that list, and it goes ahead and brings certain columns from that list over into my form control. Now here, we have certain options that we can play with. One of them is called columns. If you observe, the data cards inside the form control are currently stacked in a 3-column format. If I change this to 2, it will try and stack it up in a 2-column format. So you have the flexibility here to decide how you want to shape or organize your cards inside your form control. Plus, you have an option called layout, wherein you can switch from a vertical to a horizontal layout. And basically all it does is it puts the label and the control in a horizontal fashion versus they will now be aligned in a vertical fashion. So these are some of the options that you can play with. Now here's the next tip around the form control. I'm going to go back to the 3-column layout here. Many a times we want to update the design of the form. Maybe for the description column, I need more space for the user to enter additional text. So when you add your form control, for each of the fields or cards that are a part of the form control, you have certain options depending upon the type of the columns. So for example, the description column, it says edit text, but I can change it to multi-line text. Maybe that's the scenario in my backend data source. It's a multi-line text field. And just like that, I get some additional real estate. But what if I want to give more real estate to the user? I want the description column to span wider. You can just select this and drag it across. Now, the moment I do that, you will observe that all the other data cards have kind of gone ahead and aligned or repositioned themselves. And if you want to move things, you can select a card, drag and drop. Now, many a times when you're trying to move things around, position things, show and hide some of these data cards depending upon certain conditions, you will run into scenarios wherein the card starts acting up. It starts moving, jumping around a lot. So here's the tip when you come across or you run into that specific scenario is turn off this feature called Snap to Columns. Snap to Columns tries to calculate the width of the data card on the fly depending upon the columns that you've specified here. If I turn off Snap to Columns, now that effect won't run into play and I can freely start making changes as I desire. I can position the width based upon my use case. I can move controls up and down. The cards won't start jumping around like you saw it earlier. So it's up to you to decide how you want to position your cards, play your cards out. And that's a good one to say, play your cards out. And if you turn on Snap to Columns once again, you are going to go back to the original setting, which is what your width is. So be mindful of this specific setting. The next tip I want to give you is the cards that come in may not have all your fields. So you can go to Edit Fields and go to Add a Field and select any other field from your data source that you have connected to this specific form control. What if I want to add a section inside my form? For example, I want to sectionate this form. I need to have a header section. I need to have a body section. For that, if I go back to Edit Fields, right here on the top right, it's difficult to spot this. There are 3 ellipses there. You have the ability to add a custom card. A custom card is basically a data card that has no value. It's like an empty card. So this card, I'm just going to click and drag it and position it up. And I'm going to increase its width to span the entire width of my form control. In this card, I can go and add, for example, a label control, and I'm going to call this my, let's say this is my main section. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, give it some background color, center align it, and I'm going to reduce the width of my card. So just like that, I have a main section in which probably I want the title, and maybe I just need the description column. That's it. That's what my main section entails. And then I need another section. So you're free to add additional custom cards. You can add as many custom cards as you need. So I've just added another one that sits right there at the bottom. And now if you notice this card, I can select this, drag it, position it right here. Same concept, same principle as before. Just going to try to avoid reinventing the wheel. I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste. And let's say this is my additional info section. So I've just positioned this right here. Maybe I don't want the attachments control to show up. And this now kind of, if I preview the app, if I go back and click create, you see, kind of created this section behavior inside the form control. So very quickly, a very standard looking form control now kind of goes into this categorization mode that I can create on the fly. So
that section is what I like. That just gives it a little bit of extra touch. Cool.
The next thing is around validations. Now, if I was to submit this form control, by default, whatever required fields are set in your data source, the form control will respect it. So right now in my data source, in my SharePoint list, only the title column is required. So it says that title is required. But in my data source, none of the other columns are required. Now I'll give you just one simple use case. Let's say I need conditional validation. If the user selects priority to be critical, in that case, they have to define the due date. They just have to set the value of the due date column. So how do I go about doing something like this? You select the data card for which you want to put the validation message on. So in my case, it's the due date column. And let's go to advanced. Now inside of form control, everything is linked to a card. And every card by default is locked. Now what does locked mean? Locked means it is locked to the behavior and the configuration and the settings of your data source. So in my data source, due date is not a mandatory field, so it's not mandatory here. Now, what if I want to make a change inside PowerApps? I want to make it mandatory here. Simple, unlock the card, go to the required property and change this to true. So if I was to just change this to true, this now becomes a required field inside PowerApps. It's not a required field in my data source. Next, if you want to make this conditionally required, you can do something like that as well. For my priority column, if I select the control inside the priority column, it has a name. I'm going to copy this. It's a combo box control. You can see the type of every control in PowerApps. It's highlighted right here. I will go to my due date data card. If you need to put the formula based on any property here, just click the title of the property. It will pop it right here on the top. So the required field is true, but I want to make it conditionally required based upon this combo box. So it'll be the combo box control dot selected, whatever is selected there, dot value, whatever is its value, if that is equal to, the value is critical. So critical. So if the value is critical, make this a required field. Let's test it out. Right now, there's no priority, so this is not required. But if I was to pick critical, immediately the due date validation goes into effect. If I was to change this to any other value, the required field validation goes away. So you are free to add additional validations. You are free to add conditional validations based upon your use case.
So Reza, that great tip that you showed, I want to call it out, was that when you were putting in that conditional value, you didn't have to go and figure out, that data card name. You just clicked on the data card. On the top right, you went to the properties. Yeah, and you double clicked on it and you just copied it. That is a sweet way to avoid any mistakes of any spelling mistakes whatsoever. You don't really care what the spelling mistake is. Double click, Control C or copy it, and your formula, will always be good over there. I like that tip. That's awesome.
And the one that I like as well, another one is, don't write formulas here. I've seen a lot of people try to plug in formulas here. I'll give an example here. Let's say I want to set a variable. So set, you see how that space is very limited, right? Don't try and squeeze in formulas here. If you just select the title of the property, automatically it will plug it right here on the formula bar. So you have this full formula bar experience here to use right on the top. So try and avoid this as much as you can.
Yep.
Okay, so this is what I have in action. Now, When the user clicks on a submit button that I provide, I need to submit the form. And for that, there's a very simple function called submit form. So what are the different formulas of the form? We have edit form, view form, new form to change the mode of the form. And we have something called as submit form to actually submit the data to our backend data source, which in this case is SharePoint. Now, here's the next tip. Many a times when we submit our data, when the form is submitted, we go ahead and navigate the user to a specific screen. And what I have observed is most of us, including me, I used to do this as well. We submit the form and then we try and write the navigate function right here. We try and navigate to a particular screen. Dan, can you tell me what's wrong in doing this? Why should I not do this? Why should I not just submit the form and navigate?
Well, a couple of things, because if it failed, then it's not going to navigate. But
Right.
Other big thing is you're adding additional formula in that formula bar. So
Probably.
looking at it, it could be a little bit more confusing. Yeah.
Correct. And another thing is you are submitting the form and you're navigating irrespective of the result of the form, right? You're not concerned about whether it was successful, whether it failed, whether there's you don't care about anything. What you cared about is submit the form and take me to a different screen. So what do we do in that case? Well, the form control itself has a nice property called on success. So when it is successful, guaranteed it is successful, then this function gets executed. There's also another one called on failure. So you can capture the error and present that error message to the user. So on success, I will go ahead and navigate the user to my success screen. So that means this is a guarantee that I will be taken to the success screen only if this form is submitted successfully. So let's test this out. I'll go back. I'll pick an existing item. Sorry, I'll go back. I'll pick an existing item. Why I don't see the item? The form is empty. Well, when you set the form mode to view or edit, the form control has a property called item. And this is a very important property that has to be set. And in my case, I want to set it to my home screen data table, which is data table of tasks dot selected. So whatever was selected there, because even that is coming from the same data source, show me that right here. So now let's go to edit, make some changes. Let's say I change the status of this task to completed and I click submit. I am now in my success screen, guaranteed my data was successfully posted to my data source. Now, if I go back to my home screen, I should see that status change reflected. Let's take this one, project status reporting. Let's edit this. Let's change the priority to critical, submit. Let's go back here. We can see all those changes coming in immediately. Now, the next thing around the form control that I want to highlight here is when I submit the data and I take the user to the success screen, how do I show some of the properties of the data that just got created? For example, a very common use case, I want the ID of the item that just got created in SharePoint. Very common use case, right? I need a request ID, I need a ticket ID, or I need a unique ID. And many a times we try and query our data source again to grab that information. Now, guess what? That is not something that you have to do. The form control has a property called last submit. So right here, if I look at form.lastSubmit, this is a record. And if I open this, it has all the details of the newly created, updated, whatever action I took previously. That information will be available for me right here. So if I just use form.lastSubmit, I can read any property of my choice. I needed the ID. I picked the ID. Let's take another case here. I want to show all the details that the user just submitted. Well, I will insert a display form because I want to show the details in read-only mode. I will connect it to my data source, right? So I have this right here. And for the item property of this form control, I will use my main form, which is my task. My form was called, forgot the name, no problem. It was called form task dot last submit. And just like that, I get a read-only mode view of all the data that was just submitted by the user. So that's the trick about last submit. If you're not using form.lastSubmit, you're missing out on a lot of good properties that that specific function exposes.
So Reza, just to confirm about this last submit, it is the last submitted item by you, not just the last submitted item in that SharePoint list.
Great point. Great point. So last submit works for that specific user session only. Yeah. So if there are two users who are simultaneously submitting the data to the data source, each of them, the last submit would only work for their own use case. So you're rest assured that it is guaranteed working for that specific user session only. So it's a great property that you can leverage.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And one last tip before we move ahead to Dan's work. The last tip I wanted to show is I am on the success screen. So how did I build the screen? Well, no need to build it from scratch. There are some really cool templates that you can leverage. I stole the success screen template to build a screen like this. Now, once you come to the screen, the user has to go to the home page again, right? So right. They select this link and they come here. But I don't want the user to keep clicking to go to the home page. I want to take the user automatically after 2 seconds or 3 seconds after they view the message. So here's the tip. Use something known as a timer control in PowerApps. So I add a timer control. The timer control has something known as duration. This, I believe, is in milliseconds. So if I need 3 seconds, I'll say 3000. So it will run for 3 seconds. And when this timer control ends, it has a function called onTimerEnd. I will go ahead and navigate the user to my home screen. Okay. So this timer control will run for 3 seconds and navigate the user to the home screen. But I need the timer control to start. So how do I do that? Well, there's a property called auto start. Just turn it on. That is it. Want to test this out? Let's check it out. I'm going to go to my home screen. Let's say I select an existing item. I edit this. Maybe I change the priority. I submit. Check the timer control. 1, 2, 3. It took me to the home screen. So I never did anything. And as I went there, it just ran for 3 seconds and navigated me to the home screen. Now, one important thing to note is this timer control is not something you want to showcase to the user. Yeah. You want to kind of hide that. So just go to the visible property and set this to false. So the user never even realizes that there is a timer control running, and it can just take you straight to the home screen.
Cool.
So these were some of the tips and tricks around the form controls. Reuse it, look at the different properties. You can add sections, validations, navigate only on success, and of course, use that last submit property. It's one of the gold dust features of the form control. Over to you, Dan.
So Reza, while you are here, I had a question for you.
Yes.
Your form is pretty simple and straightforward for this demo. But what if some of us have these longer forms, and the end users are completely fine if they have to scroll? So any tips on how I can add that scrolling feature over here?
So that's a great question. Currently, if I was to add a lot of additional data cards to this form control, and again, I'm just randomly picking data cards here. It might not be the best experience, right? It adds this little scrolling effect. It doesn't look that great, right? You're scrolling the form, the screen is kind of stagnant.
Right.
So what are our options here? One is to create tabs. I have a demo on that, so you can break it up into tabs. Each section could be its own tab. Another great option is, which is not available anywhere except if you go to new screen, there's a special screen called Scrollable. If you pick this screen, it comes with a scrollable container. If I click here, I can show you that. It's called Canvas. I really wish this was exposed as a control to leverage. It's not. But here, if I was to add the form control, or if I was to add a lot of sections into this, they all scroll at once, giving you a very nice scrollable screen experience. So that's a tip. Again, great point, Dan. That's an amazing tip to take away as well. If you want a scrollable screen experience, look for this Canvas control inside the scrollable screen template.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, that scrollable is kind of a hidden secret. It is, because you can't search for it, but if you go and specifically find that template or that screen, you find it. Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea, because then you can, you don't even have to build it as your edit form design. You can add your own controls to it in each
Yep.
of the sections, and it works really well. Cool. So one of the things I want to show was I'll kind of pick up where Reza stopped was in tables. And one of the things is tables is great. I honestly love tables for a quick and easy building of the form. Sometimes even if I want to do a quick test to see how the data is coming in, I do use tables. But tables has its limitations. It is when you want to go ahead and add, customize it. That's where one of the limitations is. So I'm actually going to show you a little trick over here, but I'm going to test you. So check this out. All right, I'm going to come in
So
and I'm going to go ahead.
I have not shared your stream yet, so I'm just going to add your stream to the
Got
screen. There you go.
Awesome. Thanks. So here's what I mean. I've got a table, I've got a gallery. What do I have? So I'm going to ask this to Reza. I'm going to ask this to everybody who is actually looking. I'm going to give you like 10, maybe 15 seconds. Do a quick, educated guess of which one of this is a table, which one of this is a gallery. And I've got actually I've intentionally put two kind of short mistakes over there. So yeah, go ahead. I'm going to give you like 10 seconds. Take a really good look and tell me which one is a data table, which one is a gallery.
They look very similar.
They do. So there's like two big giveaways. One of them is something by design, and the other one is I made an intentional thing. So check this out. Okay, I'm going to now scroll, and then you will immediately know which one is which. So I'm going to go in, and there you go. The top one is the table. The bottom one is a gallery. And the big giveaways on the other slide was if you scroll up over here to the right, if you actually take focus your attention over here, this is a by design in a data table where if your text gets a little long, it'll go ahead and automatically add the ellipses, which is the ... And the mistake that I intentionally made is right over here, I put that gap little. So I matched this gap in between the labels, but over here between the 2016 and the 2015, I put that gap just a little bit more. So, one of the things is it's the design feature. And every time I have built a table and I hand it over to the users, the ability to go ahead and format it at a cell level is just not available in the data table. So at the end of the day, it is up to you if you want to go ahead and customize it this much. But when you go ahead and get these type of requests, you will have to switch it over from a table to a gallery. So let me kind of show you what all went into building this. So we're actually in this screen over here. And in that screen, I've got this gallery. So the key thing is this section over here. That is the gallery. The one on the top, these are actually just simple labels. And that behaves as the column header. And for all of that, if you want to go ahead and kind of zoom in, and then you can make sure that you match all of these, its X locations. What you can do is you can actually go ahead and do that +2. So each and every one of this label. So for example, the county's X gap between the location is always 2. And so I've always, instead of me manually going and dragging and dropping, I make sure I put this formula, because then I know that gap over here is 2, which means when I do the one between the road and the county, I'll again put 2. So that simple formula piece over there, very simple. You go ahead and grab the previous label, which in this case is location, put it in its X coordinate dot width +2. And then I go ahead and get that formula weight, because the width it only comes after the width of the location. That's why I have to get the width. And then I also want to put a little bit more gap, which is where the 2 comes. So this design functionality, I wanted to show it to you as kind of the additional thing where you are able to go ahead and make galleries a table-ish like effect, but you can go ahead and put these other things, because now it's a gallery. So all of these other things are basically just controls that are dropped over here. That's literally all you've done. But you've got that flexibility now to go ahead and do some designing, because it's a control you can do. 2 other important things is you can add these type of controls. You can add an image. You can add a button. You could add icons. Like, these flexibilities are not available in a table over there. So I've always kind of planned this ahead of time, especially when I'm focusing on this piece over here, is just to ask you, hey, what are your intentions to go ahead and use this, table over there. Is it just a quick and easy? I want to see a table. Like, Reza's example was the perfect example. Quick and easy place to go ahead and click all the links and all that, see the information. You can put a little bit of design feature. But if the people are already kind of planning, say, hey, I do need a little cell level, formatting based on the data, then you want to kind of plan ahead of time on how these things happen. Other things is Reza and I actually have both done videos on how you can put galleries, and you can actually start scrolling them as well, because tables can automatically do that scrolling, but galleries cannot. But we've got out of the box, it cannot. But we've actually done some demos on how you can put functionality. So, out of the box, you might think that, man, galleries don't give me that functionality. Like, I can scroll this way, but I can't scroll that way. Well, trust me, we've got workarounds for that as well. But this is just a very simple, quick, and easy way to show how to go ahead and build this type of functionality in that gallery. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to actually start building a little bit of an app from scratch, and I want to show you this one trick from back to galleries. But I'm going to show you something called as a flexible gallery, because that's something which is, again, hidden tool which hasn't been used a whole lot. So for those of you, if this is the first time you're coming in and you say, I'm going to build this app for the first time, this is how you start building a Canvas app. And I'm going to walk you through this. So every time you go ahead and even just type in, log into PowerApps, most of the time you will always be on this home screen, right? You pick and choose which environment you have. You only see the environments that you have access to. So you're pretty much always safe over here. Now, there's a couple of ways you can go and build an app. So you can go ahead and click the create over here, or you can come to the app, and then you can come on the top, which is a new app, and you select which type of app is. That's one of the functionalities and preferences to actually come to the apps tab on this vertical navigation menu. And then on the top, you click on this plus new app, and I click on Canvas. Now this pop-up comes, and that gives you additional functionality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and type in, the RND show, and this is show number 5. So I'm going to put that as my app name. Go ahead and create it. And now it'll go ahead and take you into the studio. The studio is all on the browser, so you're not losing anything. And here is the first advice I'm going to give you. This is a mistake pretty much everybody has made. I know Reza has made this. I know I have made this. There's some of us, I think like Reza and I both had, and can speak out for this. We've lost like 15, 20 minutes of work. Some of us have lost hours of work. And that is, when you are in, go to the file and save it. Just by naming it, you will not save it. So the first thing you do is you name it, you get inside the studio, please come over here and save it. Because until and unless you do that, it is not going to start automatically saving it. It doesn't do that. So if for whatever reason you lost internet connection, or you were, laptop was running on battery, it ran out of battery and it automatically shut down, you lost all that work. If you haven't saved it, you cannot go back and retrieve it. Big tip for a beginner level when you start going and building your apps over there.
And to add one more thing to this, if you're lazy like me, Control S. Just do Control S. That's it. It will just go and start saving your app. It will ask you for a name of your app. You have to save it once. Just save it once, then you're safe. Why are you safe? Because next time you make the changes, PowerApps automatically saves it every 2 minutes for you.
Yeah, I mean, look at Roma. She just posted a thing. I lost my whole days of work. Yeah, see, and you will, Roma, guarantee you will not make that mistake again. We just learn from our mistakes. So, all right. So now we are into the Canvas Studio. We've got a fresh canvas. One of the things I always say is like PowerApps, the flexibilities of Canvas app is it's a blank canvas, and now you paint the app. So that's what we're going to do is we're going to paint it into an app. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and now show you these functionalities of the flexible gallery. Now, gallery is a very, very powerful tool. In fact, there's not a single app I have built which does not have a gallery. Every single app has a gallery. So gallery is one of the top controls of PowerApps. But what we've always we've come to insert, and we've always gone ahead and used the gallery. And by default, either selected the horizontal or the vertical, and we start working over there. Well, first, before I do that, I think we'll get a data source. So my data source to do that is you come over here now. If you hover it, it says data. And then now you can go ahead and click add data. Now keep in mind that when you are searching for a data, just by coming over here, and in this mode, you cannot search for it here. What this search does is if you had data sources available, that's the one that it searches. But if you're adding a data and you want to search the existing data sources, which options you have, you got to first click on this Add Data button. This is where you go and search. So I'm going to go and now pull a SharePoint list. So I'm going to start typing in SharePoint. Tip number one, this is not the SharePoint list. It is something called a SharePoint sites. Big giveaway is the icon. And since I'm giving away giveaways over here, you see something else which is showing up over here, because right by viewing it right here, it tells you two very other important things. In fact, the two most important things you ever want to know as for a data source, and we all know this, is when you see that icon over here, you see that little bubble icon. In fact, let me go ahead and zoom in just a little bit. This always gets interesting. Yeah, right there. See that one? If I hover on it, it says, hey, this one is in preview. So you don't even have to go search outside Power Apps or go and Bing or something. Hey man, I want to use, say, InfoShare. Is that what kind of connector it is? Well, you see that little bulb over here? That's in preview. You see that diamond over there? That's a premium connector. So you get that functionality and that information right here when you're going into the data source. So huge big tip. Just also kind of pay attention to these kind of details over there. It's hidden. It's not a hidden gem, but it's sometimes something we can miss over there, right? Huge big tip on that. Cool. So now we're going to go ahead and click on SharePoint, and keep in mind that over here, if you sometimes see multiple SharePoint connectors, you really don't need that. What I'm trying to say is that for each and every time you are using SharePoint, use the existing connection you have over there. You do not want to go ahead and add a new connection because it is a new app. And then Reza, remind me, how many are we allowed to have over here? There's a number, right? How many are we allowed to have?
So I don't think there's a limit on the connections, but the number of data sources that you bring into your app. So if I need to connect to list A, list B, list C from multiple sites, the recommendation from Microsoft is 50. Don't go beyond 50 data sources that you're bringing into your app, because it starts affecting the performance of your app. And why does it do that? Because when the app loads, it starts connecting to all of those data sources. So that's why the performance then starts getting impacted beyond 50. So be careful about that aspect. And as Dan mentioned, don't create multiple connections. Reuse your existing connection and just start adding your start connecting to your lists or libraries.
Yep. So the tip is that in this scenario where I had only one SharePoint list is the perfect scenario. If you had multiple SharePoint connectors over there, that means you made a few extra connections, which you just did not. You always need one of every data source. Cool. So now I've come into the SharePoint source. I want to go and make that connection. What I have over here is the functionality to pick and choose my existing SharePoint sites that I have access to. It doesn't show you all the sites. It only shows the sites that you have access to. Also, it's got the built-in functionality. So I know that the list I want to go ahead and build it is in this site called POC. And in my the list that I'm searching for, I think its name starts with social. Oh, there you go. It is social. So check this out. When I was doing the search on the top right here in this text place, I didn't have to put in the uppercase S. I wasn't even sure what the full name is, but I knew that it was something to do with social. So I just selected, I typed that in, and it picked it up. So now I can go and make that connection. So here's my data source. In fact, if you're interested, here's what the data source looks like. It's got title, it's got description, and that's basically it. Simple, but does its job. So normally what we do is we come over here to the gallery, we go ahead and click on vertical. I'll kind of move it a little bit around so I can get some effect. In my this gallery, the list that I'm pulling, I don't have any images, so I can come to the layouts on the side, and I can go and pick and choose what it closely matches what I'm making. So title and subtitle is closest to what I'm going to use. So I go and select that. And one of the neat things is now when I go and click on that pencil up over there, it'll even tell me, hey, this was the additional data source that you have. Do you want to go select that? So yep, that's what I want. Go and select it. Again, the ability to make it so user-friendly. And now I'm going to go ahead and expand this. So what I do is I come to the actual just template, expand that a little bit, and I'll go ahead and increase that. So I'm trying to kind of make sure that I get at least the entire text coming in, because that text item, the text in this SharePoint list item is kind of big. So I'm going to make sure I don't need that icon. I'll delete it, expand that a little bit. And now I'm able to see.
Important thing to note here, Dan is making changes only to the first item of the gallery. He's not
Exactly.
changing, he's not going through every item and making a change. It's like a repeating control. So you change just the template item and all the other gallery items will follow suit.
Exactly. That's a key point, because I have seen when I'm doing workshops is like people try to come ahead and say, well, this one has all that information, but this one doesn't. I'm not able to move this up or there. And that's the point, is it is kind of in this scenario is all or none. So you match the design of this one, it will have to go ahead and match it to the other side. But there's one thing you can do. So to emphasize on that, I'll click on this one, which is just the border of that text. I'll go ahead and put a little bit of border so you can see what that effect is like. And over here, I can go ahead and select the auto height. Now, it is neat because it went ahead and automatically selected the height of that text. But using this gallery style, it will still make sure that each of these templates over here are still going to have that one design. And that is where I want to show you this trick. You come now to the gallery and start taking a look at this flexible height one. I know for a fact that this is not as popular, but I'm telling you, now that I'm showing you what you can do with it, you're going to probably spend more time using that. So I went ahead and gotten this connector away, right? I'm going to go ahead and now change the layout. It's got the social feed, so it's giving you like a small thumbnail, the full image size and text. I'm going to go ahead and just make it blank. Next thing I'll do is I'll click on the pencil, and it comes and tells me, is that the data source you want? Yeah, that's the data source I want. And now I can go and click on the item, and I can say, yep, that's the first text I need. So I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and try to replicate it as well as I can over there. So I'll say like this. Most of the time, it's a font number 20. It's not a full bold, it's a semi-bold. So when I click on it, yeah, got it. Next thing, I can also go ahead and click on the other text label. And let's try to replicate this full size. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. These ones are usually 18, and that fills it up. Now, I'll go ahead and try to do the same thing as well. First, I'm going to make this bold. So you see that. Now, for this flexible gallery, if you go ahead and change this auto height, the gallery becomes flexible. And check this out, all right? Watch what's happening over here. Just keep an eye on this. It's going to happen fast. I do that, and you see it will go ahead and now move. So check this space out. You have lost this much real estate value in that. But the flexible one will go ahead and immediately take it. In fact, Reza, this was like a responsive design. Like that flexible gallery was there for, gosh, how long? I mean,
Forever.
Forever, right? So this is like the pre-responsive design, which has always been there at our convenience. And honestly, we haven't used a whole lot of it. So this is the big difference. Now, I'll tell you something is, and Reza and I were kind of trying to think about this the other day. It's like, once you've added it, there literally is no way to tell you which one is the flexible gallery and which one is the regular gallery. Like we were trying to look through properties, and I was trying to say, I don't know. If any of you know this, please put it in the chat over there so we will also learn. Because right now, as we see, I don't have any way. Like even when I go over here, I can't see which one is flexible and which one it is. The only way we've learned, all of us, is that, hey, this one, we've gone ahead and turned on the auto height. Yeah. And it is going ahead and just becoming really flexible, while this one also has auto height turned on, but we are losing this much real estate space over here. So that's the only difference, but the icons exact same, settings exact same. So the flexible one is big. It really is big from a design standpoint. And I highly recommend that you start playing with it and start leveraging it, because you can actually make a lot more use over here. It's pretty neat. It's become one of my new favorites. And I've started to use that over and over again because that's something that I really did not use as a whole lot.
Yeah.
And then finally, what I want to show you is, again, galleries. This is basically a gallery fun thing. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in and I am going to now add another gallery. I think first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and get another list data source. So I'm going to come back now. And this time, since I've already shown it to you, so we'll go a little bit faster. I'll get Sharepoint. Oops, I almost clicked on it, but it's a Dataverse. It's this one. I'll select the existing one, connection. I don't want to create a new one. Go to POCs. The devices I'm looking for devices. And
so Dan, 2 minutes time check.
Great, awesome. So there I come in now, and I'm going to go ahead and add my devices. So I'll go ahead and now select the devices, and I've got all these images. Now, one of the neat things that you can do for a gallery is you can actually make your own picture library. So I'll give you this example. This devices list, by the way, is so common. If any of you have done an app in the day, you've seen this before. But check this out. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And the errors that you get, I can drag and it'll go away. I'll go and delete that. It's basically just giving me some errors. I'll just keep that as is, so on and so forth. In fact, I can just go ahead and get rid of it because I don't even need it. So I'll delete that. I'll go ahead and delete this. Now, one last thing over here is the wrap count. Right over here is the wrap count. What you can do is by maxing out the wrap count, you can make this a picture gallery. So check this out. The highest number you can put over there is 10. So the moment I put 10, you now have your own picture gallery. And this, sometimes people get a little confused. Like, wait, what happened? Did you just turn a horizontal to the vertical? So no, this is still the horizontal. What you're thrown off is that template. Like this size is now your template size over here. So you can select, that entire gallery. You can still come in, to your gallery level. And in the gallery level, you can go into the transition. You can change the transition to either a pop or a push. So if you just select, there you can, IntelliSense will tell you what the options are. And now with that, I can go in and now make that as my picture gallery. So over here, the key thing is that for your row, the maximum is 10. I mean, you can go and type in 1,000 or 100. It will always default to 10. But using that gallery, you've now made your own picture gallery. And when you select it, you can do the hovering. You've got that own picture gallery. So these were the two big things I wanted to show in the beginners level tips and tricks. Quick recap was that you start using that flexible gallery. It is really simple. And it's like the responsive design, which was already built in. And then start playing around with adding image. If you just want to build a pictures gallery, then use that wrap count. Expand it all the way to 10. And you can have a nice looking picture gallery, which is automatically built into the gallery feature over there.
Great. Cool. All right. Back to my stream again. I'm going to go full screen. Okay, so we've seen galleries, we've seen data tables. Now let's talk about some other tips and tricks around filtering data tables or galleries. Now the experience is more or less the same because you're filtering the items property of the data table, or in my case right here, as we can see, I have the items property of my data table or my gallery. Now, in order for me to apply filters here, I need to provide options to the users. And here's the tip. If we are trying to provide filters for text boxes, that's pretty straightforward. I can add a text input control. User enters the text. I can apply the filter by applying a PowerFX formula. But let's try and take this to the next level. What about scenarios in which, especially in my case here, assign to is a person type column in my data source. I have progress, which is a choice column in my data source. Now, is there a person or a people picker column in Power Apps? No. Is there a drop-down column in Power Apps? Yes. How do I get my choices? You need to write a formula. So there's work that needs to be done to get that information. So here's the tip. The tip is if I have a form control, you can steal from the form control. And this is something that I frequently do. Now I need the people picker column. Guess what? There's already one inside the form control. Just go and copy the control, go back to the home screen in my case, and just paste it. Now, when I do this, it's going to run into errors because there are certain formulas here that are related to the data card that I do not need. So all I have to do is just go to each error and start cleaning those formulas up, literally just deleting those formulas. And I think there are like 4 or 5 formulas before the error goes away. Now, what's the advantage? Let's preview the app. This is a people picker column. If I search for Reza, it's actually searching in my AD for everyone whose name begins with Reza. Or here, let's take an example of Sarah, right? So the great tip here is that you don't have to build this from scratch. You don't have to go about looking for a control. That control is already there for us that I just literally just stole from the form control. And I can do the same thing for any other control of my choice. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep this extremely simple, and I'm just going to apply one level filtering, which is for this specific control, which I'm going to call as assigned to control. Okay, that's the name I'm giving my control. I'm going to copy this. Let's try and apply the filter to my data table. There is a function called filter because I need to apply a filter. Filter my data source where I have a column called assigned to inside my data source. This is a person type column. So assigned to dot email is equal to my filter control on the top dot selected dot email. Now if I close this and if I preview the app, show me all the items that are assigned to Sarah. This should go and apply the filter for all the items that are assigned to Sarah. Now, if I was to clear this, in this case, I don't see any data. I don't have anything mapped on the top. I don't see any data in my data table or in my gallery. Well, that's because this condition is trying to check if the email address is any of these values. So currently this is blank. So it's trying to do a blank check. So the way you can avoid it for blank conditions, I don't want to apply the filter. Here's the trick. The trick is simple. Check to see if this is blank. What is blank? My assigned to filter dot selected dot email. If my control value is blank or my regular filter. A condition or another condition, if the first one evaluates to true or will evaluate to true, it will get me all the data. So observe now, it's empty. It's getting me all the users based upon the data in my data source. If I was to change this to a specific user, let's say Reza, it should go and apply the filter for Reza. So that's how simple it is. And you can add a combination of filters here. You can add multiple refiners and the users can go and start refining. Now, another tip here is many a times you want to give the users a reset button as well. Now, in this case, I just have one control, one filter. So if I click this reset button, I can simply say reset my control, right? And if I preview the app, click this, goes to empty, shows me all the data. Easy, straightforward. What if I have a lot of controls? Let's say I have a screen with 10 controls, 15 controls. In that case, what do? We write this reset control 1, semicolon, reset control 2, 3, 4, 5. We keep doing this, right? We just keep adding the controls. How do you avoid this? Here's the tip. Pick your control and I can bulk select control. So let's say I had a couple of these controls on my screen. Let's just take an example. Select both of these by holding the control key. Once you have both of these selected, there's a property for almost all the controls, which is called reset. Set this to a variable. Let's call this var reset. Okay, I'm just setting it to a variable called var reset. It's throwing an error because this variable does not exist. When the user selects this reset button, I will go and do this. Set this variable reset to true. In fact, set it to false first and then set it to true. Okay, it sounds a little funny that I'm setting a variable to false and then I'm setting it to true, but there's a reason why I'm doing this. And when the app loads for the first time, which is on the app on start function right here, I will go ahead and ensure that I set that variable to begin with. I'll set it to true and I will run this. If I preview my app, let's just test this out. Here, I'm going to filter by Reza, and this is not going to apply any filters, but just to show you how it resets both together. If I select this, notice in one go, it reset both of those controls. So I did not have to go and write that long formula that reset A, B, C, D. Straight away, by just using that variable trick, you can reset all the controls in one go, which is extremely, extremely powerful and makes your formulas look a lot cleaner. Another tip right here on the screen, because I see it, the data table, you cannot add character to a data table, right? You cannot add formatting. But how did I add this formatting right here in due date? How do I have this logo symbol right here? Dan, any guesses? I'm putting you on the spot. You're on mute.
What was the question?
The question is, you cannot add formatting to a data table. That's why you use the gallery. So how did I format these controls? Well, the formula is there for you to see.
Oh, yeah. And you can add those icons over there. Pretty awesome.
Right. And these icons are nothing but emojis. So if you need a little bit of character to your data tables, you can still get it through emojis, and emojis are supported in PowerApps everywhere. I can name my Power App with an emoji. I can have a label control right here. So let's try this. Windows dot. That's the trick to open the emoji keyboard. So here, let's say I search for the heart symbol. So I pick heart and I will put a space. Check this out, right?
Cool.
I just added an emoji into a label field. I added it into a control. I can even go to settings and here's the name of my app. I can even have an emoji right here into the name of my app. I can do that. So you can place emojis everywhere to add character, even screen names. So it's up to you to decide how you want to leverage them with emojis, but I think they add a lot more character to your application. So that kind of covers most of my demo part. But one last thing I want to cover is, let's say I forgot to close my function, right? I have an error and suddenly my app breaks, right? Everything's broken, nothing's working. What's happening? Why are all my data cards erroring out? Let's go and look at what's going on. Now, the easiest way to figure this out is go on the top right. There's this.
And Reza, do me a favor. In that formula, on that filter, go and click on it.
Yep.
You see, he's clicked on it, and it doesn't even give you any error.
Right.
I mean, there is that one little thing way on the right.
Yeah,
so
right
this demo that Reza is showing is kind of priceless, because if you had errors, you would see that big red squiggly lines in the bottom. This one doesn't have that big one. So check out what he's going to show you next.
So it's tough, right? It's tough to figure out where this error is. And many people tend to miss this. On the top right-hand corner, you have the app checker. First of all, don't get worried that many things have broken. Many people get nervous. Oh, my app broke. Something changed. I'll give you the most common answer. PowerApps doesn't work. That's not true. There's something that's incorrect. There's a syntax error here that is causing this issue. And the easiest way to get to it is just go to the app checker and go to formulas. It's going to tell you what the error is. So see right here, unexpected characters, the formula for this. So if I select this, it will take me directly to that formula where the error is, and also kind of pinpoint to the location where that error is occurring, which is right here at the end. Of course, it's not magically telling me that I'm missing a bracket, but it kind of gives you an indicator as to what is not right within your app. So you need to be extremely smart and extremely careful whenever you come across errors to understand how you can use the app checker. And one more thing you can use the app checker for, which is a very important concept that every new app maker needs to be aware of. I'm not planning to deep dive into that concept, but I want to show you something right here. I have a priority column. So let's say my requirement is show me everything where the priority is not critical. Let's just take that as an example. So priority dot value is not equal to critical. That's my formula. Now, the moment I write this formula, I get this little blue lines that says there's a delegation warning. Delegation means the Power App will not handle a large data set, period. It cannot handle large data. When you run into delegation warnings, the users of your app are never going to be aware of these delegation warnings. When they use the app, there's no warning. Everything's fine. Everything's working. However, the data source at the backend, if it is large, Power Apps will ignore that large data set and only work with, if you go to settings, go to general, right here is that limit, 500 data. So if my list has 50,000 records, Power Apps will only work with 500. I can change this to a maximum of 2,000. You cannot go one beyond 2,000. So that's the max limit you have if you run into delegation warnings. Who sees these warnings? The maker of the app. So as a maker, it is your responsibility to ensure that if your app is running into delegation warnings, you are taking care of it, or you are okay that your data source is never going to grow beyond that number. And the easiest way to check a delegation warning, if your app has any, once again, just go to the app checker, go to formulas. Right here, it clearly tells me that there is a delegation warning. And if I select it, it takes me back to that formula. So that's a very key tip for makers who are new to Power Apps. It is an extremely important concept to understand. Trust me, no data source of yours is going to be less than 2,000 over time, unless it's a small scale application that you've designed. So be mindful of that. And that kind of covers all my tips. And Dan, sorry, but we have 5 minutes for your tips now.
That's fine. All I need is 5 minutes. It's a really simple, quick, easy one. Is get our audience just a quick introduction into the responsiveness design. So first thing, when you start playing with it, the responsive thing, first thing you got to do is you got to go back here. And I'm kind of fast forwarding that we went ahead and built, say, a brand new app. There was one screen, saved it. Make sure you name it and save it. And then you come to your file and then you click on settings. Now,
so Dan, sorry to cut you here. So PowerApps is not responsive by design. If I make an app, it's not magically responsive.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. That was a question. Correct. By default, it is not responsive. So keep that in mind. That when you're building it, you usually select if it's going to be a tablet or a smartphone. That is it, and it will actually even have preset layouts over there. And I'll show you why I got this going. I come to settings. In the display, these are all presets. The sizes that you have, the orientations that you have, these are all presets. So you can select all of these. This is not responsive. All right. So keep that in mind. Now, to start making it responsive, the first thing you want to do is you want to uncheck the scale to fit. And the moment you do that, it will also go ahead and do the lock aspect ratio. It goes ahead and turns this off. You only other have option for lock orientation. What lock orientation does is basically it will keeps the screen in a certain orientation. Like if you want your app to be in a landscaping type of app, then if you were to switch it over to portrait mode, it won't do that. So you've got after you've changed the scale to fit to off, you still have the flexibility to toggle this off and on. All right. That's the first thing you want to do. Then here's what I recommend. Don't start from scratch and start getting confused. Come to the new screen. On the new screen, you've got these functionalities over here. You've already got all of these to play with, playing with it and getting you comfortable with it. You've got these automatic layouts to start playing with, and you can go ahead and start, creating the controls over there, and putting in the containers to start playing with it. Another tip I'll give you is, well, first of all, for the containers, when you click on the plus to insert, it's in the layout. So in the layout, you've got these 3 containers. Now, this container is a question I get asked, is that, Daniel, that's been one of the first containers. It is quote unquote old. Do we still use it? And I said, absolutely, still use it. A number one place I have seen it being used is you go ahead and always put that as your main filling place. So you put it out there, you put its X all the way to 0, you put its Y all the way to 0. You can go ahead and changing its width to actually match the app width. You can go ahead and do, start that way. Same thing for the height. You go ahead and see, and I'm not even searching over there. I just come and click on the height. And then you can go ahead and do it in the height way. So that's basically how you start. That big container is not, because it was the first one, it's not the old one. It is still very usable. And that's where I got is, use it on the upside. And then you can go ahead and add all these other horizontal containers in it. I start adding buttons and it'll just work. The last tip is if you go into start building in canvases inside your teams, a lot of the templates there are already responsive. So go there and take a look at those ideas. And you can actually do a lot of copying and pasting over here in that. And maybe Reza and I will do another video on this about copying and pasting from teams and vice versa. But don't, start from scratch. Use the existing design, which is already there. Use these layouts and templates that's already there. It gives you a really good head start. And then you can just improve it and tweak it to match your design. But that's, just the beginning of the responsiveness and the layout over there. Key things was that app setting design that was, you've got to go ahead and toggle off the layout, because just like Reza pointed out, it is not responsive by default. You've got those layouts in the landscape or portrait, and you've got those screen sizes, which are, pretty standard. But to really make it responsive, you've got to turn those off. So that's all I have on that side.
Thank you, Dan. So that covers the tips and tricks that we would like to cover as part of this session. Of course, there were a lot more that we had planned. Time permitting, we had to keep within the limits. We covered most of the common use cases: galleries, filters, forms, basic error handling, conditional formatting, responsiveness, and so on and so forth. Now we're getting a truckload of questions. So Dan, let's open the floor for Q&A. All right, the first question, which is the most important one. Daniel, your t-shirt is so cool. Is so cool about making apps. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's a question from Power Dash. And if you've posted your question before, I will request you to post it again, because it gets easy for us to look at the bottom of the chat to pick it up. It's difficult to go back on the top. So I request you to repost your question. Okay, so Power Dash, how to copy screens and make the formulas change to reference the new controls instead of the old ones? That's a great question. That's a
So
good question.
PowerDash, when you're saying how to copy screens, which means like if you copied it from one place, it should automatically go ahead and update all those control names. Because I know when you put in a new control name, it'll automatically put that _1. Like, are you talking? It automatically
Talking
goes
about formulas, Dan. So let's take my example. I had my
Okay.
home screen, which had the data table and which had the filter. If I copy that and take it and create a copy of that screen, will the controls on that screen and the formulas that I created, will it be relative to that screen, or it will still point to the first screen? I think it already does that. From what I know, if you copy and paste, it won't refer to the previous screen. It does not. It refers to the newly created. It tries to refer. There are certain scenarios wherein it may not. There are certain scenarios.
Yeah, specific. Those scenarios are not so much in the controls; they are in the formulas. So yeah, the controls will go ahead and automatically switch to that new screen. That was a good question.
Okay, the next one is trying to scan through the question. There was a good question that I want to bring it up. I kind of answered it, but I want to bring it up here on chat. So Alexandre asked this question. I had delegation problems with distinct function, but no blue lines were displayed in the formula for me. So basically, the trick that I showed to see those warnings, the warnings were not displayed. Now, let me tell you this. There are many formulas where delegation is kind of obscured. I'll give you another example, the with function, WITH. If you use the with function, you'll never get a delegation warning. And many folks have built apps using with and they feel their app is perfect. Well, with kind of obscures delegation. So if I don't get a warning, how do I, as a maker, how will I visualize that my app is not working against my data set? So here's the tip that I can give you. If you remember the setting that I showed for delegation 500, I changed it to 2000. You can change it to 1. That's the minimum you can set it to. If you set it to 1, if your formula is running into a delegation warning, you will never see more than 1 result. So that's a clear visual cue for you that your app is running into a delegation warning. Now, is this the best experience? No. Ideally, the app checker should be handling all the delegation issues. I know that some formulas do not, and I know that the team is working on it. Which team? The Microsoft team.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Alexander. So I wanted to bring that up.
Cool. Any questions on like the designing piece, some of the introduction designing pieces? We'll definitely go and answer this one from Pritham.
So this one is from Pritham.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So how to print multiple rows in PowerApps without scrolling. So Dan, you want me to take this?
I mean, printing multiple rows in PowerApps without scrolling. Let's say I have 500 rows. I mean, Pritham, it depends on which app you built to begin with. If it's a mobile app, it's not going to work. If it's a tablet app, you may be able to get 500. Use that tip that I showed you with the gallery, because if you have 500 items and they're all small text, fill up that screen with that galleries, going and increasing the wrap count. That might help. Otherwise, also use whatever is the gallery.all items, drop it into an HTML. You can get a lot more real estate out of that way, because the point is you want to fill that up over there. So those were the 2 tips that I have, Reza.
Perfect. Just one thing about the print function. Sorry, I was looking at questions. I don't know if Dan mentioned that, but print is only meant for single screen printing. So even, I think I did a video on this wherein I tried to include more rows. So yeah, you can include more rows, but it's going to be that standard A4 size paper, basically. What if I have 10,000 rows? I want to print that. Now, don't forget, delegation also plays a key role here. A gallery only loads data in batches of 100. Why? Because it's performance. PowerApps is running on a mobile device. So is it going to print 10,000 rows even though it has it in the backend and PowerApps understands it? No, because it won't load 10,000. If you want to go for these large scale scenarios, my better option or my recommendation would be to call Flow. And in Flow, you can generate a document, read all the data, generate a file, and just send it out to the user so they can print it. Not the most ideal experience, but that's the workaround for now. Okay, and print, many people are bringing this up. Print has a lot of limitations. It won't work in embedded scenarios. It won't work in the SharePoint List experience scenario. There are a lot of limitations with print as of today. Okay, moving on from print.
Yeah. Kavita Singh actually has a good question about flexible gallery. Yeah. So the question is, will flexible gallery work with multiple columns? Yes, it will. The example that I gave was I had basically two labels. So those were multiple ones because no matter how many columns you have in the gallery, it goes ahead and pulls it in as just controls. That one little issue I found was when you went ahead and used that icon, specifically the line over there, that broke the flexible design. So why that breaks it, I really don't know. So when you have these multiple columns, and if they are, other columns like text or labels, those will work. But some of these icon ones, some of the controls like icons can break that flexibleness. So to answer your question, yes, it'll work. Just watch out for some of those controls because they will break the flexible feature.
Great. So another question here from Nilesh. What is the best way to save data? Today we showed one approach, which was the form control. And Nilesh is asking what is a better option? Patching using the patch function, which we did not cover, by the way, or submitting the form using the form control technique. So
you can use both. Yeah, you can use both. I have actually shown videos on my style where you can use, just go ahead and do a submit. And then the example that Reza showed is after he submitted, he did the last submit and he got the ID. Once I've got the ID, then I can go ahead and do the patch as well. So you can use both. Just keep in mind that it will create versions in that list item. If you use the Sharepoint list, it creates versions over there. If you are only going to use patch, and then say you've got Sharepoint as a backend with a lookup column or a managed metadata column, then your patch function is going to get really interesting. So keep that in mind based on, sometimes edit form might be the best option because you don't have, all you do is submit, use the submit function and you're good. But if you really want to make a really good design and say submit form or the edit form is not giving you the flexibility to move things around, then just be mindful of the patch function. So kind of keep that in mind.
Yep. Just to add, I feel the form control is great for beginners. If you're beginning with PowerApps, it's the form control. You just drag it, drop it. You just saw how I built it, right? It took me 10 seconds to build that form.
Yeah.
Try that out without the form control. It's a lot of work. And patching requires you to understand the backend controls, the data types. It's meant for more, I won't call it advanced, but definitely not. When you're starting off, start with the form control. Even today, when I go across projects, if the requirement is a form that the user fills out and submits, the form control just fits perfectly. There are scenarios wherein patch works. I recently did a video series on bulk updating data. You can't do that with the form control. You can just submit one record in context of the form. So in that case, the patch control makes a lot more sense. So it depends. The answer is it depends upon your use case and your scenario. The best part is we have the best of both worlds, as Dan mentioned. Okay. Next question is by Sheikh Samad. Shall we use environment variables in PowerApps for data source connections? This was a beginner's video, so we didn't cover that. The answer is yes. In fact, you always begin with solutions. You're building apps, you're building flows. Go create a solution, start building it in their application lifecycle management. Use environment variables to connect to your data source. We were focused on beginners today. Ideally, I'm hoping in future there comes a point wherein you create a connection and it automatically creates an environment variable. We're almost there with a setting that we need to enable. But for now, the answer to your question is yes, but not in today's context. Okay, moving ahead to the next one. By Janhavi, is there any way to handle delegation warning on the in operator other than using a collection? I think I just did a video on this week. Check that out. Just this week. I actually used the in function. Is there a way around it? No. There is no ways around it with SharePoint. There's no ways around it with SQL as well, which I was a little bit surprised when I was doing my research. I believe it's only Dataverse that supports it and no other data source for now. So be mindful of your data sources. And what I've shown is a method that works around it. It's not an actual search, but it works around it.
Awesome.
Okay. Trying to see. There's a question from Lakshmikant, and I'm going to point this at Dan. Will we get the 5,000 threshold limit while showing data from a SharePoint list?
So yes and no. You get that 5,000 if you go to the SharePoint side, you go to list items, and you go to the properties. You will see that 5,000. I actually have. I've done a video. I haven't walked through it, but in my video there was 44,000 items. And when you build it well in PowerApps, you've made sure there's no delegation issues. You've created the formulas correctly. From PowerApps side, it will work just fine. You can go ahead and pull all the lists and everything. You only see the threshold limit on the SharePoint side. In fact, some of the lists, you might not even be able to delete them at the last list item. So, but again, for SharePoint people, a list threshold is also a big deal, right? So you want to keep that in mind. You don't want to say, well, I'm using PowerApps, I really don't care about that. You do want to care about it. So plan accordingly, where if your data source is going to increase, and you know it's going to increase, start planning, well, is SharePoint the correct place for that? Maybe I want to start thinking about Dataverse, or if you already have a team in your company who are already skillful in SQL, well, go and consider that. But the takeaway for that is, yes, there will be a threshold limit. It only shows up on the list. It doesn't really show up on SharePoint until and unless you actually built the formulas really well over there with no delegation issues. You want to add to that, Reza?
No, I think you've more or less covered that part. Move to the next question by Dinesh Mishra, and he says, I'm a beginner. Just we try to focus on beginners here.
Yeah.
So I'm a beginner. I'm starting with Power Apps. I need to learn Canvas apps, model apps, and I get this question a lot. Reza, do you have any training content? Well, my YouTube is my training content, and so is Dan's. This question gets asked a lot. Where do I go? So I'm going to try and put this up on screen. There's this link that one of my favorite people in the community, he's from Microsoft. His name is Charles Sterling, Chuck. Amazing guy, awesome guy. So he maintains this page, and in this page, he has actually a breakdown of every level of expertise. So if I'm a beginner, where do I start? I have some experience. Right? I want content for app in a day. I want content for flow in a day. I want anything you need. This kind of has all of those learning resources that you can point to, right? And this is something that gets frequently updated. I'm going to post the link inside the YouTube chat. So I just pasted it. Go and grab that link, save that link. I think it's extremely useful to go through those resources. I'm not saying they are training resources, but they'll help you to get started with the platform relatively quickly. One more question that I saw, I can't pop it up because I don't see it here on the list, but it was a great question. How do I distinguish whether I am on the mobile app or I'm in the browser experience? It's a very common question, right? I'm running a Power App. How do I know I'm in mobile or I am in my browser? So there is a function called acceleration. And this acceleration has three properties, X, Y, and Z. So that's my movement in the X direction, Y direction, and Z. It's basically a plane where I'm moving in. Now, the key thing to note is all mobile devices will have an acceleration value. The browser is never going to accelerate. It's always going to be empty. So if you check the acceleration.x, if it is blank, then guaranteed you are on the browser. If you get a value for acceleration.x property, that means you are definitely not on the browser experience. So if you want to check that out, here's another tip. You can use this function to get that working as well. Okay, moving on.
And I'm going to take two more questions.
Yeah, probably a couple more questions. Dan, you want to call out names so I can pop it up on the screen? Yeah. All right, here's a question that is consistently popping up. I'm trying to. Do you have any of the? Do you have any parameters? Garrett is asking this question. Yeah. Says, do you know of any other parameters we can utilize? So that's a question, Dan. Is that when you trigger the app, can I pass certain specific parameters to do certain things? And that's a tip right there in the question itself from Garrett.
That hide nav bar is pretty awesome. See, Reza will show you on the top if you zoom in, if possible. So while he's doing that, you see on the top of the app, it says PowerApps :R&D Demo 1. That header over there by default always shows. What Reza is going to do is watch what he's doing. He's going ahead and taking off a lot of unwanted things, and he's focusing on like the last piece of the formula over there, and he's going to put in that ampersand, which is the and then hide navbar. And the moment he does that, watch that top header will disappear. It's like magic. It just disappears. But here's the neat thing about this is until and unless people are literally focusing on the URL, they don't even know this is PowerApps. I mean, yeah, we put PowerApps on the label over there, but they won't know this is Power. That's pretty sweet though. So that hide navbar is really great. Other things you can do is you can do deep linking. So in this case, we've actually put the hide navbar. If you get the correct control name from that, like a text one, you can do deep linking where you send people, for example, they have to fill out a form. Standard procedure is that the forms, it's a single form, but that form is used for medical reasons or for paid time off or for whatever. You can give people links where if you're telling them that, hey, fill out this paid time off form, through the deep link, already populate stuff like, what type of form it is. Oh, it's paid time off. Put that in the deep linking. So the neat things for this is that you can create a simple form and just in your deep links, pre-populate what that form type is, and it fills up really faster for the end user. Deep linking is pretty awesome. Just keep in mind that there are some things you got to play around because it depends on what controls you have. If you've got a drop down, then there's some additional work over there. There's a few of us actually MVPs besides Shane, besides Reza and I think Shane Young also did a video on deep linking. And so yeah, just do a bing on that and you'll find some examples. But trick is what Reza showed and what the example is. You put the ampersand, hide navbar equals true, same thing, ampersand, and then put the control name equals, and then fill it up.
Perfect.
Cool. What else? You got one more?
One last question. This is from Venkatesh. I see there are many other questions. I'm trying to pick questions that are more catered towards beginners. So I see a lot of questions like I have an issue, 5,000 items, 10,000 items. Those are more advanced stuff. You can post your questions once this video goes live. Dan and I will try and answer it. Right. This will be on my channel, so you can go there, look at it again, post your questions in the comments. So the question here is from Venkatesh. I have created an app. I have published it. Now I've come to know that I need to change the dimensions of my app, or maybe I want to go ahead and make my app responsive. So I think this is a good use case because right here, if I go to settings of my app and go to display, I have not turned on responsive design, or in my case, my app uses a standard dimension. Now I need to change it. Yeah, you can go ahead and change it right here. So you can always go back to the settings of your app and make changes to it. Of course, if you make a change, your app is not going to magically adjust the controls to your change. You will have to go through each and every screen and start repositioning your controls. So it is going to be an expensive operation. That's why when you begin designing a Canvas app, you have to take the decision upfront. Are you designing it for tablet or mobile? Or do I need responsive design? If I need responsive design, start using the responsive containers that Dan showcased earlier. If you don't invest in it initially, you're going to pay a hefty price later on, because once you have all your screens built out, you got to go and do a lot of rework. So please keep that in mind.
Yeah.
All right, that covers all our questions, and we are only 22 minutes over time today, and we still have 150 people here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate this. Thank you so much. And just to close out quickly, guys, Dan and I wanted to highlight some of the great work Biden has been doing for us. In fact, we need to hire him in the R&D show.
I think so too.
He created this awesome graphic for us for this episode. I hope we actually were able to do that. I hope you were able to pull out some tricks of the bag. I hope you learned something new.
I mean, you sharing my screen, Reza?
Yeah, your screen is being shared.
Yeah, because I mean, look at that. The trick from the hat, it literally is a PowerApps one. I mean, the details just blows my mind. So thank you so much, Bjorn, on that.
Thank you.
Other things we have is thank you for following our YouTube channel. And for putting on hashtags over there. Thank you so much. As of this morning, we had 210 followers. Just thank you so much for following us over there on social media. You are already on Reza's YouTube channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to him, click on that subscription, click on that bell, because he pulls out videos once a week. And so alerts will come to you. And then you also have a link to my YouTube channel. And then finally, I know some people asked about Next week they said, hey, can you do it on Power Automate? Well, your wish has been granted. Next week we're going to do the exact same thing. I mean, the next time we're going to do the exact same thing. Power Automate tips and tricks. So this will be a beginner level, but as you saw today, we shared a lot of tricks. So we will do the exact same thing in next week as well. We've got some amazing things to show. So we'll go ahead and post that link over there, R&D_6. We'll also post it on social media. We'll post it on LinkedIn. So go ahead and do all the things that you're doing to attend that. But that's going to be our next show, and we are excited. We already have some great plans for that, and hope to see you all there. That's all we have.
That's all we had for today's show. Thank you, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy weekend. Stay safe. And we look forward to seeing you in the next show. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys.